Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick notes. One, I had at an earlier session suggested that we take up the notion of doing a climate or a morale survey, and I believe the board had been looking forward to doing that, and my understanding is that that's been, the work session has been scheduled for March 15th or sometime in March. I just wanted to reemphasize that based on, I think, what we're hearing from the community, that we should take that up as soon as reasonably practicable to do so. The second thing is, I think it would be worth a specific discussion about setting the metrics that we want to use long-term to judge the success of our school system. And there have been a lot of ideas that have percolated up over time. I believe I heard the chairman during the campaign talk about looking at cohorts of students and seeing how they made progress. I think there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of expertise in the community we could bring to bear, and I think it'd be worth an extended discussion among the board members and with the public about what's the best way to judge how our schools perform, because I don't think any one of us are satisfied with looking at SOL test results as a real metric for how we're doing. You know, as I've said frequently, we ought to be passing almost all our kids, and if a few didn't pass in some cases, the majority of our students, it's, I think, not a tough call. We ought to be having measures that tell us more about the quality of our schools than that. And so I think it's worth a further exploration of what we could do in that regard without increasing and hopefully decreasing the degree of reliance that every school system is already forced to have on standardized testing. So that's just my piece on that issue. Thank you.
Thoughts? I mean, I think the two issues that you raise are in many ways linked. I would note that often we have people who want data-driven solutions, and at the same time, I think having a data-driven approach to how one does as a school division is about analogous to a data-driven approach to how you are doing as a parent. There may be things that you can assess for the outcomes of that, but I think at the end of the day, there's a great deal that's not. I mean, how would one ascribe data to an art or music program, for example? At the same time, Mr. Ryder, you and I have had discussions, and I've had discussions with others in the community. With respect to a climate survey, there are many facets to it. I don't think anybody is against the process. We have training for the new board members coming up on Thursday that's going to touch on many governance issues that I think dovetail with that. We'll be having a governance retreat then on February 20th, and then we'll have the work session. And I think there are going to be a lot of issues that go to, how are we doing, how are we functioning as a community? And this is a multi-stakeholder environment. We have students, we have taxpayers, we have parents, we have teachers, we have support staff, and the climate, I think, embraces all of those. The outcome that we seek, it can't just be your graduation rate. It can't just be your SAT scores, because what in the world do you tell people in Mount Daniel or Jesse Thackeray? Well, just wait in 12 years and we'll get back to you and let you know if your students do well. So I think those are difficult questions, and yet they're questions that we can't shy away from. So I think that's an excellent idea. I think one of the things we should do is incorporate those issues and questions into some of the activities we already have scheduled, and I mentioned a couple of them. And then I think we should probably, when the dust settles and we look to our future work plans, as well as our, there are also proposals that we have the school board is part of the mix. How are we doing as a board? And I think that's absolutely legitimate as well. So I think that, I wouldn't say as much that's an agenda item as much as it should be a pervasive aspect of many of the things we're doing, but we'll probably have to do an agenda item just to check in and sort of weave together all the strands. So, anything else?
Respond briefly, Mr. Chairman. I, by the way, do not disagree at all that trying to generally put metrics around things like theater or music would be ridiculous. And some of the things that we do are based on first principles. Like we support small class sizes, although there is data, I think, that supports having small class sizes, because we think that's an independent value in our school system, that we think it's better for our teachers, it's better for our kids when they have small class sizes. The question, though, for me is not whether to have metrics, it's whether you've got good metrics, because we always get a report from the superintendent about how we're succeeding. So I watched that, I believe, from the audience before. I just want to make sure that the slides that the superintendent and the school staff present to us align with what we think will be the best performance measures that we can have. So again, it's not a question of doing measures where we're not doing measures, but making sure the measures that we've got are the best for judging the performance of the school system and of the board. So thank you.
Well, I think Tim Cook said it even better than you or I could. He said he doesn't care about the numbers as much as he does about what generates the numbers. And I think that's kind of what we're all trying to come up with as well. I'm sure that will be a journey and not a destination, but a worthy one. Anything else? All right, moving on then to the superintendent's report.
Just a couple of things tonight. We did host the CEO of Renaissance, which I know the school board was aware of that last week. And again, it was really nice to have the representatives out here and visiting with school staff and our leadership, and we're able to kind of hear how our RTI process works. And it was very validating, I think, that they're noticing the work that we're doing, because the three people that are here, it's not normal for them to actually go out to schools and just visit a ton of schools. They have thousands and thousands of schools across the globe, not just in the United States. And really they were able to take notice by some of the work that our staff have done across Virginia and nationally, where, for instance, presenting, down in Richmond or at VSBA conferences and seeing the work that was taking place, and kind of through word of mouth that how we're utilizing data with children and having that longitudinal system from kindergarten through 12th grade. So that was very, very nice for us to have them here and just validate some of the work that's happening. Just on the snow days, just as a reminder in case anybody missed it, but I had a call today from one of the news media who's doing a story on how many days you have built up, and we are an hours district, so we go by 990 hours minimum, and then we build in additional hours in our calendar so that when we have the Snowzilla like we did this year, and possibly tomorrow morning, I don't know, I'll wake up at 3:30 tonight and figure out, they say it could snow again. But when we have that, it's trying to make sure we have that 9 or 10 day built into the calendar so that we can have, 4 or 5 full snow days. And then every time you have a 2-hour delay start, those calculate up as well. And then we have to account for those things that happen, which we've had happen over the last couple of years for, electrical outages, for sewage issues where you close one building. But we're in really good place on our snow days right now. Just, in general at MEH, we do have a situation there where we're watching, we have a sewer pipe that is underneath the building, literally in the floor of the building outside of the kind of daycare area, where over spring break we know we have to actually jackhammer up the floor in the hall inside the building in order to get to one of the pipes that's underneath the ground that has separated. And what it's doing right now is, because the pipe has separated, coming up through the drain, we're getting these little sewer gnats. And so, I just want, people to understand, because they were very aware today that these little sewer gnats were in the building. We do have the fumigation there, and we looked at, can we accelerate the work, but you can't accelerate the work on something like this because you have to turn all of the water off, and it's a big project, which means we would need to close MEH down for a week at least of school, and probably 2. So what we're doing now is working with I'm going to call them the fumigator. I don't know what their real name is, but they spray or whatever. So they're coming out now and on a regular basis over the next 5 weeks to make sure we keep the gnats where they're supposed to be. So just so you're aware that that's an issue. It will be covered by insurance. Sevi and I both fully believe that this is a product of the earthquake we had in 2011, because that's where we had a lot of cracks in MEH in the building and had to have repairs done after the earthquake. as well as when the following year in 2012, when we closed down for the sewage issue, it was an extension, not the same pipe, but in that same area. And when they got down in the ground after digging the parking lot up, it had separated. So again, we think these are just delayed issues from that. We've also had just lots of our poor little facilities people. Sevi and Brian cannot keep up right now. We had a water main break last weekend just outside of Thackeray. Thought we may be closing school on Monday morning, and they were able to get that back on. Then the next day, a water main broke outside of Mount Daniel. Luckily, we didn't have to shut their water off until after school hours. And then we've had leaks as well at George Mason. So our facilities team is just working nonstop, and I want to acknowledge the work that they've done. And just getting through the snow issues were around the clock work for a huge team of people, and it just will not slow down for them. So I'm hoping that eventually it's going to slow down for them and they can catch their breath. But they're doing a great job, really keeping all of our facilities going and working incredibly hard.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Any questions? All right. Seeing none, then we'll go to the board and student liaison comments. Why don't we start from right to left? Mr. Reidinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have fewer comments this time around because the snow eliminated the advisory board meeting that I was scheduled to attend, which was the support staff advisory committee on the Monday of the snow. But I'm looking forward to that. And I have my first official advisory board meeting assignment this Thursday with the Health and Wellness Advisory Committee. So since Aaron and I are to drive to be in Richmond on Thursday for remedial indoctrination, we'll drive back up to go to that. I'll drive back up to go to that committee meeting that night. I had some very good experiences lately. I did have an opportunity to attend the first STEAM night at Mary Ellen Henderson, with all of my kids being at Mary Ellen Henderson. And I could say that the staff and the administration did a superb job. It felt like a mini Odyssey of the Mind session going on for a considerable period of time. And all of my kids and my wife and I and all the other families who attended had a blast. And both Mr. Harris and Mr. Pepper and all of the STEAM teachers who were there were dedicated and having a lot of fun. So it was an enjoyable night. I also would like to call out, this. I know teachers make sacrifices all the time for their students, but as I think many of you know, 7th grade and 8th grade are when you first get into science fair work. And so, as I said, all of my kids go to MEH, and I know, like I said, many teachers, I'll just call out one in this case, Ms. Johnson, who teaches 2 of my kids, actually came in and spent a big chunk of time on both a Saturday and a Sunday, so kids could come in and finish off their science fair work and get their exhibits done, on her own time. And it's an illustration, I think, of the sort of thing you can see in a small school system like we have that you don't often see in other places. And I'd just like to commend all of the teachers and the administration for those sorts of efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reidinger. Ms. Gill.
Like Phil, my BIE meeting was rescheduled due to the snow, and I will miss it, but because I have a budget meeting that day. But there are many volunteer opportunities, and we just put out the directory of everyone who's helping, and it's huge, the number of people in our community, businesses, and individuals who come out and support our schools. It's amazing. I'm actually going to Richmond tomorrow because I'm the legislative liaison, and I'm going to learn about that duty tomorrow, and then I will join up with Phil for our indoctrination. I'm also the liaison to the elementary PTA. Jesse Thackeray, a preschool, they're doing a puzzle drive for them. If you have wooden puzzles, please bring them. The preschool is in need of them.